What's up, guys? Coach Jared, Coach Matt, bringing you another episode of the Richmond Elite Podcast. This is take two, kind of almost take three of this podcast. We've been struggle bussing. We got a new camera. We got the headphones, which we've had the whole time, but just didn't wear them. But it's kind of nice because we got a class going on downstairs, and we don't hear them right now.
I can't hear the loud music. And all
hopefully you can't hear them either.
Yeah, it shouldn't be able to.
Yeah. So, anyways, today's podcast is going to be kind of a New Year's podcast where we recap last year, 2024, some of the cool things that happened at the gym, maybe in our lives, and then kind of the cool things that are happening in 2025 for both the gym and then us personally, and some of our own personal goals that I think you guys might find interesting, because it is hard as you get older. You do lose track of some of the personal goals in your life, and you become more career focused. And we know a lot of our kids listen to this, and that's just part of life, right? You got to pay the bills, but it's important to continue to have personal goals, hobbies, things that are, push you to be better in other areas of your life outside of your career. So we're going to talk about, some of the things that we want to focus on personally this year. So 2024, big year for Rep. We grew a lot. We bought the building that we were in. Previously, we were renting out a 3,000 square foot space in our building. We ended up buying the entire building earlier in 2024, which is about a 10,000 square foot building. So added a lot of space.
Yeah.
With that, added a lot more. We started doing more adult group classes in addition to our youth training programs. So just added a lot to the plate of Rep. Matt took on a bigger role here at Rep. We started the podcast. Lots of stuff. Busy year. We grinded, right? This year, hopefully, we're gonna continue to grind, but we're also going to, maybe get back to some of our athletic kind of aspirations. So what do you think about 2024?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it perfectly. It was definitely a grind. It was definitely we were kind of, very much so in the moment of what we were doing last year. So I feel like that's why everything kind of went on the forefront as far as like work went and everything like that, and our own goals kind of went towards the backside. But like we previously talked before, I think it was such a big opportunity for all of us to go through that together, right? Like, you can have that grind and have that almost like that what if of what was going to happen with everything, right? Because like there was a lot of moving pieces that sometimes we didn't know what was going to be next, So it was kind of day by day thing that we had to go through, and ultimately we ended up in a pretty good position right now, and now we're able to kind of look back on it and learn from it a lot more than I think we even realized in the moment. So 2024 was a lot of learning, I feel like, for everybody.
Which is kind of a metaphor for life, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to know what hits you every time, right? You're not going to know. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? And you kind of just got to trust your work ethic, right? And trust the grind almost. Like, I think, we ask athletes what gives them confidence or are they nervous before games? And I think some of the top athletes, there's some of them that probably still get nervous, maybe more excited than nervous, right? But some of them I think are pretty calm, and I think it's due to their preparation. So again, we worked hard, and it's like, that gave me confidence, like as the owner and the one taking on a lot of the risk, right? Is that, everybody here works really hard at their jobs. So it was really good stuff. Yeah,
for sure. And I just think back to I don't know, not a lot of people, maybe everybody probably can relate to this watching it, but all that stuff on that one side of the building, I still can't even picture how we did that, right? Now that we have both sides and now that everything's kind of spread out how it is, it's like, how the hell did we get everything on that one side, and how are we able to even train athletes like that? It was crazy.
You figure it out, right?
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
That's another thing with life. You just kind of figure it out. I think everybody tries to be too. I mean, that's a lesson that I've learned with business is you're never going to be fully prepared for stuff. You have to do it to learn, right? You got to do uncomfortable things, right? You got to get outside your comfort zone, and that's how you grow, right? And it's kind of like fitness. You do one thing one day, right? And then you do a little bit more the next day, which is outside of your comfort zone, because now you're comfortable with what you've done, right? So now you do something you haven't done before, like it's a heavier weight, or it's more reps, or it's, faster running, right? And that's what your body adapts to, and that's how you grow, right? And so it's the same thing with life. You have to push yourself. You have to get yourself into, uncomfortable positions, and you have to do that on purpose. I remember on the first take of this podcast, we talked about how, like, when we were in high school, it's like you almost like don't want to leave your comfort zone. Like that's like the entire goal. And then, when you grow in life, you realize like you actually like should purposefully get out of your comfort zone, like constantly. And that's the whole point, is to get out of your comfort zone.
And I feel like in order to teach people, you have to like do that same thing, right? Like if you're going to teach people to go out of their comfort zone, you have to get out of your own comfort zone at the same time. Otherwise, you don't have that actual feeling of it, because it's like a scary feeling for a lot of people, right? It's
very
butterflies,
scary.
it's that adrenaline feeling. It's like competition, right? You have that same fear when you go to compete, but if you don't feel that, then you can't really explain it to a kid, or you can't explain it to anybody really, or teach it, or how to go through it. And you're less credible if you don't go through things too. It's like almost people want to know that you experience some sort of hardship, or at least the same one as them, in order for them to listen to you, right? So
100%.
I think that was a big thing too. And I think even the athletes that were training and the members at the gym over the past year have realized, like, wow, Jared and these guys have worked really, really hard to where it's even at right now. And we're still changing, we're still growing, and things are going to be completely different, 6 months from now and a year from now. But I think that we, as like a whole team, have become so much closer member wise and staff wise, because of just like the change together. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like all of a sudden it switched. It was over time, and new people joined and people left in the process of that. But I feel like everybody became way closer because of it at the same time.
We kind of all got out of our comfort zone together, and like trusted each other, and made it work, right?
Especially when we were like switching everything over to full side. Like it was construction zone sometimes in here. People were working out, you know what I mean? Like everybody saw the whole process of it. It wasn't really a behind closed doors thing, So I think that kind of benefited everybody, so.
Yeah, that's what everybody's always like. Yeah, and people that know me, like they're like, they come in the gym and it's different all the time, right? And it's like, that's just partially me. Like I'm always trying to like optimize and change things, but that's like, again, it's life, it's growth. It's like, to me, I'm always trying to get better. Like there's never a complacency. Like I actually think I struggle with not being complacent enough, almost like,
me too.
Not being, what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like you're not grateful, or you're not like happy with where you're at.
You don't embrace like what you're at right now, almost like you do, but it's like you don't let it relax very much. You're on.
I remember when I opened, I wanted to open up a gym someday, and I said, I remember, it's hilarious. So this is actually kind of a cool story, but I remember saying that. So the gym that the 3,000 square foot unit in this building that we used to rent out was called the Strength Lab before we moved in. And I remember I would go to the Strength Lab sometimes and train with couple of my friends who are members there, and I remember telling them, like, man, I wish like I had this space one day, right? Like if I had this space, I could make it so cool. Like, and then it happened, right? And then I was like, man, this space is so small, right? Like if only I could buy this whole building someday, like I could make it, so sick. And then I bought the building, and then now it's like, okay, man, all these changes that I want to make, like where before I thought I would have been happy at each point. Like that's what, and you just never kind of are. Yeah. So I think there's a skill definitely in learning to appreciate where you're at and take a second to reflect and all those things. I would say that's a skill that you need to learn after the skill of being hungry. Yep. So I'd say most kids probably need to go the other direction, right? And they need to learn to not be complacent, right?
Yeah, I think that I was just going to say, I think that comes from being a high level competitor too, right? Like you're not satisfied with just one thing, you want to keep going, you want to keep getting that like satisfaction from accomplishing something, but yeah, I think that I run into that problem a lot too. It's like, okay, even if I worked my butt off one day, I'm like, okay, how can I top that the next day, right? Like, or what do I need to do?
But you can't, right? Every day, you're never gonna be able to top yourself every day.
There's no shot, right?
I always tell athletes, like, because you know how if they go for a PR, they want to go for like a big PR, and I'm like, just go for like a 5-pound PR. Right. And the analogy I always give is like, if you could add 5 pounds to your, whatever lift each week for a year, you are adding 260 pounds to that lift that year. That's probably unrealistic, right? Like I doubt any of your lifts are going to go up 260 pounds in a year. And if they do for 4 years, you're adding 1,000 pounds, right? It's like, that's not going to happen. So point is, why would you care to be in any bigger of a rush than that, right? So, but you got to kind of take that over to life sometimes. But I think first you got to, like I said, you got to learn how to be hungry and always want to push to the next level. And then maybe someday, and this is where, again, we're in this phase of life where we have to, and this is probably because, like you said, we were athletes our whole lives. And that's why I think getting these personal goals that we're going to talk about later is important to us, because you got to remember, hey, why are you the way you are, right? What made you that way? And that's why I think sports in general are such a good, thing for kids, right? There's a lot of other activities that are great for kids, but I think sports really teach you a lot of lessons for life. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, I think we touched on that a little bit in one of the takes that we talked about, but it was like you were talking about how, athletes get better grades in school most of the time, right? Like they're held to a certain standard because they have to be eligible for their sport, right? Or they have to hold a certain GPA, and it teaches them like a certain sense of accountability that they didn't get if they don't have a sport, especially, or if you don't compete in a sport, let's say at a high level, then you might not have the same accountability trait as other people, but you're still learning something in the process of it. And even if you absolutely hate competing in athletics, like someday you'll look back and be like, oh, I learned that when I was on a team somewhere. I learned that from a coach sometimes. So, it's like, that's always going to be instilled in you. And I talked about it with my old coach on a couple episodes ago. It's like wrestling taught me values that I am going to use for the rest of my life. And I don't compete in wrestling anymore, right? I'm not using them in an athletic sense as far as wrestling goes, but I'm using them in my day-to-day life for work and for coaching and everything like that. So it definitely translates over time, right? But
well, let's kind of go into our goals for 2025 then. So first, I'll just start out like as a gym. I want to continue to grow and be. I mean, I think we already are, but I really want to solidify us as like the training facility for athletes in the Quad Cities. Like I want us to be known as the place to be. I don't see why you would train anywhere else.
Yeah.
If you're a youth athlete, and I want to solidify that. I think with all the improvements to our facility, and I mean, our coaching is already top notch. Like, I think when you combine those two things, I don't see why you'd train anywhere else. So I want to keep, solidifying us in that sense. As a business, kind of keep doing what we're doing almost, right? Because, like I said, I'm really proud of the results that we have, putting a lot of athletes out there into college, Division I, whatever. It's really cool to see. And we get some kids in here that are so young, and then to be able to like watch them grow for years is super cool. So that's, as a gym, I think that's what we're going for. Me personally, a lot of you guys maybe have heard I had hip surgery 3 weeks ago today.
It's crazy. It doesn't even seem like, that seems forever ago already.
Right, doesn't it? Yeah. So I had hip surgery 3 weeks ago. Basically, I had my labrum repaired. Hip labrum tears are super common in strength sports, so that's not a huge deal. Mine was pretty bad, but it was repairable, so that's good. The big thing that I had going on was something called a cam lesion. A lesion in general is just a extra bone growth kind of over years of, wear and tear in your body. Your body starts to lay down more bone, right? Like arthritis, onto the bone, right? And I had to get my leg had to be dislocated, or my hip had to be taken out of the socket, and then they had to go in and kind of shave that bone down because that extra bone wasn't allowing the femur to glide properly in the socket. Okay, so they had to repair the labrum and then shave that bone down so I had a nice shaped ball to go in the ball and socket again, right?
Crazy. The dislocation is wild.
And I think that's what causes the long recovery, because like they have to cut tendons and ligaments to get the hip out of the socket. So anyways, I'm recovering for that. It's a 8-month recovery, but the plan is once I'm fully recovered, I'm going to try to make a run at in the sport of Olympic weightlifting again and see, what I can do. I want to win a national championship and, just see how far I can take it. And that's super important for me. Like I told people, it was weird. It was a while ago, but maybe a few months ago, my wife and I were just sitting in a restaurant, and I was like looking around. I'm like, I used to be able to sit here and be like, I'm Jared Richmond, like, national level weightlifter. Like I'm the guy, right? You should you tell yourself a story, which whether that's an important story or not, you just tell yourself that. And I've always derived a lot of my self-worth, I think, from being an athlete, which it could be good and bad, but it just is what it is. It's always been that way. And when you lose that, you lose some of your confidence. And I think that confidence goes into other areas of your life, right? Like it goes into business, it goes into, whatever it is, right? Your relationships, confidence is confidence. And so for me, getting my athletic kind of goals back in check, I think are going to help my, confidence as a person. And also it's going to help me be a healthier human being because I'm going to be able to train how I could train. Before I couldn't train, I couldn't do the things that I needed to do to stay in shape and to be the athlete that I wanted to be. So anyways, looking forward to, and just follow the journey. We're going to do a little bit of we're going to try to film some episodes of something called like the comeback.
Yeah,
and
like a vlog series.
Yeah, like a vlog series, and just kind of document it for my sake. Cause I want to be able to, for everybody to hold me accountable and say like, hey, like we haven't seen a comeback episode in a while. Are you still training hard? Right. And then also just to maybe inspire people and show like we train athletes. Athletes have injuries. Athletes go through things. And it's important to know that you can I still train pretty much every day. Just not, doing squats right now. Right. So there's always something you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a big thing too, is like these athletes are going to see it. And by the way, that first video was not very long after your surgery that you were hitting that bench series, you know what I mean? And you were at work basically doing upper body stuff when the day after, 2 days after.
I was at the gym the next day.
Yeah. So
don't tell.
Yeah. Don't say anything to his doctor probably, but
Dr. Breeze, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
You can't sit still for that long. That's just too long, dude.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, there's always something. And the saying that you've said before that always sticks with me is never do nothing. Like, there's very key phrases that stick in my head, and that's one of them is just never do nothing. And I think that's something that kids need to really adapt. If they didn't already have it, they need to, because I mean, even just doing a little bit of active recovery stuff is still not doing nothing, right? And that's still benefiting you in some way. So I think a lot of them think, oh, I'm hurt, my whole body doesn't work, right? If my leg hurts, my arms don't work, my core doesn't work, whatever. But like you said, never do nothing is something that you have adapted for a long time, and obviously it shows, right? And
I had to. I think I used to be more of like all or nothing, and I think that was because I could do all like for so long, right? Like my life revolved around the sport of weightlifting. So school, when I was in college, came second. Like, I mean, I got good grades, but I scheduled my classes around training. Like it was very clear, like what I cared about. And that's a lot of college athletes, right? And then even after, when I was working, just coaching a little bit here and there at different gyms, like my athletic performance came first. And I scheduled kind of my life around that. And so anyways, it's easy to be all or nothing because you're always all, like you're always on everything. Then when you get, when life kind of hits and, I opened up a business and it's like, okay, I got a little bit busier. Then you go from, okay, well, I can't do the training that I wanted, that I used to do, so I might as well not do anything, right? And it's easy to do that. And then you get injured, and again, the same thing. Well, I can't do the training that I used to do, so I might as well not do anything. And that's just, one, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like something's always better than nothing. But the other thing is like, the fact that you can always work, maybe you can put more emphasis now on the things, like for me, like my upper body, like as a weightlifter, like we train mostly legs, right? So your upper body doesn't get trained as much as an Olympic weightlifter. So now I cannot train my legs, right, for a while. So I have to train my upper body. So I might as well just focus on my upper body and maybe build up that deficiency, right? So you can use these as like opportunities to improve on something that, that you previously wouldn't normally work on.
Right. Yeah. And it's just, that's your own choice in your head. Once you kind of face adversity, like an injury, it's like you either let it shut you down completely, or you just understand that it's part of what you have to go through as an athlete sometimes, right? And being able to come back from that is honestly, some of the best athletes I feel like ever are guys that came back from like crazy injuries sometimes, and they worked through that, because mentally it's one of the hardest things to go through as an athlete is getting injured and getting taken away from like something that you like to do a lot of the time,
100%.
right? So that's why I never really understand when athletes get hurt and then they just want to be like done working out or done training for that whole time period, because I'm like, I would go crazy. Like when I got hurt, I missed wrestling so much that I like had to do something. Otherwise I would just go crazy. You know what I mean? So it's always confusing to me. I'm like, why would you just want to completely forget about the sport, or like forget about your training as if you're not ever going to compete again, right? Like you have to come back from that, and if you don't get the results you want, then you're going to be upset about that, you know. But really, it's one person to blame. It's yourself at that point. So
the last time I had a big injury was when I broke my wrist years ago, and it forced me to not train my upper body because I was in a cast, right? And so and at the time this is when I very first started training, basically. So I hate training my legs like everybody, right?
Yep.
And it forced me to like only train my legs. And I was like, okay, well, I normally train four days a week. I'm going to continue to train 4 days a week, but I'm going to now train only legs 4 days a week or whatever it was, right? And that got my legs really strong. And what it did was, and we were talking about this before the podcast, like training your legs is like an acquired taste, right? It's like at first, when you first start doing it, right, it sucks. And then you start to get good at it. Like you start seeing your legs grow, you start seeing your legs get stronger, your squats go up, whatever, and you kind of become addicted to it. And so anyways, when I was forced to train my legs because I couldn't train my upper body, it kind of made me enjoy training my legs more than my upper body. Well, now it's the opposite, right? Like I'm forced to train only my upper body. So it's kind of good. Again, like something that I don't always prefer doing. Like I'm now forced to do it over the legs. So that's literally, as an athlete, if you don't get it, do you know a single athlete that hasn't dealt with injuries at a high level?
It'd be hard to find one. Yeah.
Well, if you don't, like, it's going to sound really controversial, but you probably aren't training very hard, right? Like,
yeah, or playing very hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like for sure. No, I mean, I personally have never met a high level athlete that hasn't gone through some sort of adversity when it comes to like injuring their body, right? And honestly, as an athlete, if you're, like you said, you're training hard and you're competing hard, you're never at 100%. Right. There's not a single day in my athletic career that I woke up and I said like, wow, I feel really good today. Like I just feel better than I did the previous day, or I just feel less sore, less beat down, basically, right? But you're not going to feel 100%. Like, just accept that. And you can't use the fact that you feel like 98% good and 2% bad as the reason to not, you know, go work out or like get better, right? Like a lot of times they just use that little percentage of 2%. Oh, my body hurts. You know, I'm taking the whole day off.
My big toe hurts.
Right.
It's like, are you serious? Like, you know,
your whole body's fine. Like it's your big toe. Right?
Yeah. We'll literally use every other joint but your big toe. It's okay. Right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, Coach Matt, let's talk about your goals.
Yeah. So, business-wise or career-wise, obviously it's the same. You know, we're kind of on the same wavelength with the goals for the gym. Is just to keep growing it and keep doing what we're doing. You know, for me personally, like Jared said, I stepped into a new role. It's something that, you know, I've kind of dabbled in a little bit with social media stuff, but this is kind of, you know, a whole new thing to me that I'm learning at the same time. You know, with like the softwares and editing and doing all that stuff, right, and coming up with content. And, you know, we talked about getting out of our comfort zones a little bit, and that's obviously pushed me a little bit to get out of my comfort zone. If you look at like the difference in the videos when we first started them off of our phones, basically, to like where we're at now, it's been a huge jump, and it's going to change completely even more, you know, the more that I get comfortable with it. So I would say that's the biggest thing. And obviously keep getting athletes in and keep training athletes is a top priority of mine, and making sure that they accomplish their goals. But that's, you know, that's something that really hasn't changed at all. And then personally, we kind of talked about it before, but we're going to both hopefully compete in some sort of way. I want to compete, whether that's in a fight, whether that's an Olympic weightlifting competition. We talked about that last time. So I'm also going to learn all the Olympic lifts with Jared or from Jared. So we'll see if I still have a job after all that.
Yeah, Matt, that's definitely like, you know, if that's my area of expertise, that's maybe not Matt's. I mean, it's just not something you guys did in wrestling training very much, right? Like, obviously he's familiar with the lifts, you know, he's done the lifts. But I mean, I snatched and cleaned every single day for, you know, 5 years in a row, pretty much. So it's a little bit different, right? So anyways, I was just telling him, like, when I start training again, we train together a lot in the mornings. It'd be cool if he lets me kind of coach him. And I mean, he's way more flexible than me. You know, he doesn't weigh very much. No. So the nice thing with weightlifting is it's a weight class sport. So like there's some advantages there, right? He's, I mean, just generally very strong. Like I said, mobile. Wrestling builds a lot of body awareness, that kind of thing. So I think he could be really good in weightlifting. So I've just been telling him he should try it. And here's the thing: it's like just the training itself is going to help you for fighting, right? For sure. And so even if he decides not to compete someday, I think just doing snatch, clean and jerk will. I mean, there's not a weightlifter that's not explosive, right? Like I don't know too many weightlifters. Like I mean, me and Reese are both like big guys, and we have over 30-inch verts. Like for just it doesn't even make sense, right? And it's like it's just because we do explosive movements all the time, right? Sure. So, anyways, if you see Matt, pressure him into competing in weightlifting. We're gonna host a meet this year. That's the plan. So maybe he can do a meet that we host.
No, I told Jared, I think in one of the episodes or one of the first takes that we did, I told him one of my goals was to do something out of my comfort zone, right? So I've been training MMA for a while now since I've been done wrestling. So I've always had kind of a goal in my head to want to compete in that. And also Olympic weightlifting is something that's interesting to me too because I'm always around it. I see a lot of the guys in here doing it. I see Jared coming back to it, Reese doing it all the time. So it's something that I'm surrounded by, and I enjoy watching you guys do that stuff. So being able to kind of understand it a little bit more on that side would be, a goal of mine as well. And then, Jared said, if you see me, pressure me to do it or hold me accountable because that's kind of what I feed off of as well as other people holding me accountable. And that's exactly why, him and I work out together in the mornings is, I know every day, we got to show up and do something and it holds me accountable.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't want to wake up every morning. I don't want to wake up every morning.
It's tough.
I woke up at 4 this morning. Had to get here kind of early, and it's just like it sucks. But you have to. There's people there that are holding you accountable that you are like you told would be there. Like I'm not gonna just not show up and Matt just be like, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
Jared didn't show up today, right?
Right.
And that's part of like one of my things in life is do what you say you're gonna do, right? Like if you say you're gonna do something, do it, right? So Matt, you talked about last time. Again, one of the last takes. We're referring a lot back to that, but. You kind of wrote some goals down for the year, like, and you put them on there, and I don't know. You say you put them somewhere where you could see them, right? And where every day you just like there's kind of two types of motivation. There's like an intrinsic motivation, right? Like basically you are motivated by yourself, and you want to be better. And that's kind of when you write these goals down, it really helps you become more intrinsically motivated because you're faced with your goals that you put on the piece of paper that you see every day. You're faced with those every day when you look at them, right? And then there's extrinsic motivation. And I think as an athlete, usually you start out being intrinsically motivated as a kid because you're just like, I just want to get better, right? Like and because you don't really care what other people think. And then as you grow, your motivations are maybe more extrinsic. You're like, I want that girl to think that I'm good at wrestling, right? Or I want my dad to think it, or I just want to, I want to be known as something, right? Whatever. And then, I think in life those goals have to become more intrinsic again, because you're gonna quickly fizzle out and realize like I don't really care what that person thinks.
Right.
And if that's the only thing keeping you accountable, then you're not going to, continue with your goals. So I really just liked the fact that he wrote his goals down. That's something I want to start doing. But again, we should also utilize that extrinsic motivation too. I don't think we should not utilize it. So I would say, putting goals out there. That's why, we're making these comeback videos. That's why we're saying these things on a podcast is to be like, hey, we said we're going to do something. And one of our like things in life is if we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So, it's good to put your goals out there, I think, so that other people know and can hold you accountable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as an athlete, my advice for that is to, if you are afraid to like get it out into the public, just tell your circle, right? Like I have a very small circle of people that I trust with like very important information, right? So those people, for me, they get to, see my goals and they get to be a part of that because for that exact reason, I want them to hold me accountable if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I know for me as an athlete, a lot of times I'm like, I don't really want to tell everybody my goals because one, I feel like I can't trust everybody, and I feel like maybe they don't have my best interest in mind if I don't fully trust you, right? Which is, maybe in my own head a little bit, but athletically you kind of have to be like that because, and especially in wrestling, it's a team sport, but it's individual at the end of the day, right? Like I'm going out there and competing by myself, for myself, and ultimately it helps my team at the end of the day if I do well. Right. So, if you don't trust a lot of people, then tell like your close circle. But for me, writing it down was you know, like I said, kind of like a contract to myself, right? I sign it, I date it, and you know, that holds me accountable just like telling other people does. So I think both are very, very beneficial. It's just being able to balance, you know, not telling people that necessarily don't care about your career, what your goals are.
Or yeah, don't care. What do they say? Don't take advice from somebody who you wouldn't like, whose life you wouldn't want to have,
Right.
essentially,
Yeah,
or something like that. Basically, like, you know, you don't need to take their opinions into account, right?
Sure.
Because you might tell them your goal, and they might say that's a stupid goal, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, like I said, I don't want to live your life. I don't
Yep.
want to be there. So that's part of that. But I just think a lot of people don't have the intrinsic motivation maybe that you have, and it's like they might have to leverage some shame almost. Like,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, and I think everybody has different motivation levels in different areas of their life, right? So like, for me right now, I'm super intrinsically motivated business wise, where I think at one point I was more motivated, I definitely was. But just now I have a family and, I have a mortgage and like, you got to pay the bills, right? And you got employees that they rely on you. So I'm a lot more intrinsically motivated, I think, when it comes to business. And so now I'm feeling like maybe I got to utilize some of that extrinsic motivation for my fitness and my, right? And so I think it can go back and forth.
Right, for sure. Yeah, 100%. 100%. So I think, both ways, like I said, are super beneficial for anybody. And I need that. Sometimes I need that extra motivation from other people, like you said, but like I almost shut it down because I'm so to myself about that stuff, right? And like I could benefit from other people telling me, like pushing me a little bit more, right? But it's something that's also kind of an acquired taste for people because a lot of people like just don't welcome help. They just think they got it all figured out until they really don't. And then at that point, you're just too far gone to even kind of grow as an athlete or as a person. So always taking in advice, whether it's good or bad or whether you care or not, like is a huge thing to grow as an athlete and as a person, I think, mentally and physically. So yeah, definitely motivate us if you see us.
Any other goals for 2025?
Keep growing my wrestling club right now. About a year and a half ago, I had like 3 girls in my club total, and it was brutal. And I showed up every Monday, Wednesday still, and it was the same 3 girls, and they were little girls, they're 9 years old, 8 years old, so brand new girls. But this past weekend, I was able to put together a whole dual team. It was over 10, 12 girls that were competing on a team, each weight class, and ended up getting a trophy, getting 3rd place, first one for our club. So that was a pretty cool moment. So that kind of motivated me to keep growing that and keep getting more girls in, and keep trying to push myself as a coach in other areas that aren't just weightlifting or training and wrestling. And I'm dealing with a completely different sport when it's women's wrestling compared to men's wrestling, right? Like I coached men's wrestling for a very long time in college, and I've been coaching boys wrestling for a long time. So switching over to strictly girls wrestling has been a learning experience for me as well over 2024, and it's taught me like a lot of lessons that I can translate to work and to life. And so I think growing, that's a big thing on my list as well. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned. I think we missed a week, but we're back on the grind, the podcast grind, and we're gonna have some cool guests, I think, this year. So yeah, stay tuned for episode 14 of the Richmond Elite Podcast.
Yep. The Bears. Go Bears.
Yeah, Bears win over
Yeah.
the Pack. Go Packers suck. Or was it Green Bay sucks?
Yeah.
Peace.
All right.